Yes, so I'll be analyzing the gameplay, especially with great focus on the defensive side of EAFC player Jose from Canvic Records. So I wrote down some summary that I got in this so after analyzing the video of his gameplay and then what he can improve on. So let's focus first on the defensive side. So his defensive profile is ultra deep central compactness, and the player demonstrates elite central defensive compactness but suffers heavily from passive retreat and low block mentality. While the middle of the pitch is locked down effectively during sustained possession phases, the team fails to transition its defensive high line enough or fast enough when forced out wide. What I mean by this is, in some period, so in some part of the game, he is very compact in the middle, which is really great. And if you want to concede less in EFC, you have to reduce the space between the center backs and the midfield. By doing so, it prevents the opponent from going down the middle and then forces them to the wings, which although others panic whenever the ball is sent to the wings because they think there will be cutback, which is 90% the case. I think it is the best thing that can happen to the player to force the opponent to the wings. The problem is whenever the ball has been sent to the wings, Jose doesn't move his defensive line upwards, so pushing them up, so that the space will still be reduced, and it will give the midfielders shorter space or shorter time to press whenever there is a cutback. So let's watch this video, and this is when he considered his first goal. So you can see here the opponent, also in red here, was trying to find Vicky in the midfield. But you see what Ude did? He team pressed, and by team pressing, it forced the AI, also Van der Ven and also the defensive line to move upwards. The thing is, with team press, it should be only turned on for like 4 seconds. After 4 seconds, everything becomes chaotic. The best way that you could have gone or you could have handled this is if he had offside trapped. So I mean if he had moved his offside trap his defensive line upwards. So meaning by pressing this button, upwards, twice. By doing so, it forces the defense to move very up, and still you are still in possession. Although you're not in possession of the ball, you're in possession of the game. One thing that a lot of players forget is they think that when you don't have the ball, you don't have possession of the game. No, without having the ball, you still have control of the game. Okay, so the opponent couldn't find space in the middle, so he passed backwards, and then Jose tried to get the ball with this left back, which was great because right now the opponent has nowhere to go to. And this is what I was saying. Because he couldn't get it on the first attempt, it creates this gap between the defensive line and also the midfield. And this is what you want to prevent. So he should have moved, or he should have offside trapped. He should have pressed this twice. By doing so, it moves these guys upwards. So I mean there won't be any space here. But still he wasn't hurt, so the opponent was able to turn back, and when he turned back, there should have been another offside trap. By doing so, he should have moved these players upwards and then pressed really fast with these players. But then the opponent was smarter, and then he was able to get hold of this player. And as you can see, I said previously that when you have team press on for more than 4 seconds, your defensive line becomes chaotic. And this is exactly what is happening in this case. You have only one player, which is Vicky, being man-marked by 2 players, Van der Ven and the other player, I think Upamecano here. By doing so, it forces this player here, Frankie de Jong, to either press this guy or to press this guy here. Ne? So in this case, he had no matter what he would do, he would still lose possession of the ball, no matter what he would do. So the ball was passed to Musiala, and this was what I was saying. If he had minimized using the team press and then had pressed offside trap, these guys would have moved upwards, and then there won't be a straight line from Musiala to Vicky here. But he didn't do that, and his defensive line was out of place, forcing a simple through pass to Vicky, and then he conceded. So first things first, when the ball is on the wings, no, force them to the wings, and then when he turns back like this, you have to spam the offside trap really hard so that it forces your defensive line to move upwards. No? And in this case, you shouldn't be man marking with the left back. No? You don't touch your center, don't touch your defensive line. Leave them. The person who should have been man marking Makubil in this case was this lady, this girl, I think Selma. Selma would have been the perfect choice to man mark right now. Because if Selma had man marked, no, there wouldn't have been space here. So as you can see, Selma is not doing anything here. So only these 2 players are the ones responsible for this, and this. So Selma is basically not doing anything. Selma should have been the one putting pressure on these guys, and then or you could have switched to this guy and then teammate contain with or second man press with Selma, and it will force the defenders or it will force the opponent to go backwards. So first things first, make sure that every player on your team has an attacking and also a defensive stance, where they should be when attacking, when they should be when defending. So in this case, and then like I said, he conceded. And one thing that I've realized in FC26 is when the opponent starts scoring through cutbacks, it becomes their only source of goal. So meaning they will never want to go to the middle again. Their entire target will be on the wing because they know you're weaker there. So you have to prevent them from scoring from the wings. So that's the first goal you conceded. And then the second goal comes, I think, around this time frame. Yes. So first things first, no, the ball was switched here. And like I said, because the midfield is really compact, the opponent had no other chance than to go backwards. Now, in this case, Jose, you have to move your midfield, your defensive line upwards. No, you had to move them upwards and then team press for only 4 seconds. No? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you turn it off. And so meaning you had to spam this offside trap to move this defensive line upwards. But he didn't do it. But he was still in composure or containing the midfield. But as you can see, there's a big gap here. There's a big gap here. You see, there's a big gap here. And because there's a big gap here, and then he's still team pressing, you see there are 2 players here. There are 2 players here. I'm defending only 1 player. FC26, let me tell you this, FC26, the 2 center backs are responsible for the strikers alone. The center backs are not responsible for the cam. The person responsible for the cam is the DM, also the defensive midfielder. He's the one responsible. So if you are playing FC26 and then you don't have any pure DM, so let's say you are playing 4-5-1 flats, 4-5-1 flats, you don't have any pure DM. So because you don't have any pure DM, this cam is basically free anytime, because these two center backs are only focused on the striking. They don't care about this cam. So another way to fix this, if you are not playing without a DM, is the offside trap. Because by moving the offside trap upwards, you force the players to be aggressive, because Musiala will be in the line of sight of Van de Ven. So he turned it off, and because, okay, let's go. He turned it off, but because he didn't turn it off earlier, it forced a huge mismatch in midfield. So meaning right now the question is where is the midfield? Who is playing as who is the midfielder, and where are the defenders? And look at this player here. Instead of him to press harder, he's going to press this guy instead. That's what team press does. Team press forces your players to be aggressive, and also to start pressing the opponent's player. And the thing is, they are not pressing the player you want them to press. They are pressing the player in their line of sight. So let's see, if this player is here, the left back will press him because this player is in his line of sight. This player will be pressing this player because he is in his line of sight. And this player is pressing, this player is pressing this guy because he's in his line of sight. So team press is only for max 4 seconds. Okay, but then he switched it late, so he turned it off late, so causing a huge midfield gap here. So here is a gap, here is a gap, here is a gap. There's a big space, and then he conceded. So first things first is, I would even argue that offside trap is the only thing you need, and then you don't even need team press, because by making the defensive line and also the midfield gap really small, you can press any player you want automatically. So you have to, in this case, when the ball got to Sarah Jody, this lady, and then the ball was passed back to Frankie de Jong, that was where the first offside trap should have been pressed. So here, that was where it should have been first pressed here. But he didn't do it, and then he team pressed. So the ball was turned here again, and that was where the second offside trap should have been triggered. And then the ball, the team press should have been turned off in this time. But because he didn't do it, there was still gaps there. So now what the AI will do is then they'll become super aggressive, and then their midfield, look at how the midfield just goes out of the place. Look. So right now, like I said, because this player is in his line of sight, if you team press for a longer period of time, he will start pressing him, although he doesn't have the ball, thereby leaving a space here, you see? No? So team press for max 4 seconds, and make sure that the midfield is always compact, and force the players to the wings. So then he conceded in this match too, also in this possession too. So now let's move to 1659. 1659. 1659. Very good. So now, one thing I would advise, especially in the first 60 minutes, is to increase the depth of your team. I would always advise minimum 80 or 80. The reason is you have complete control of how your midfield is, and also whenever your team is pressing really high automatically. So when you have your team depth to 80, it pushes automatically your center backs upwards. As you can see here in the radar, it pushes them upwards, thereby allowing you enough time to put pressure on the ball holder. So as you can see, Jose has moved the defensive line really high, and then he's putting pressure on the ball holder. You see, because the midfield is really compact, the player doesn't have anywhere to go. So what he's trying to do is to bait Jose to make a pressing mistake so they can then pass it in the middle, but then there's no gaps. So first things first, whether attacking or whether defending, the midfield is the most important place if you want to win the game. Okay. So he switched. He first tried to press here, and then he teammate contained, and then here teammate or second man press, which was really good. So he was covering this player here who was in space, and then putting pressure on the ball holder with the second man, which was amazing. So meaning the opponent doesn't have anywhere to go again. So you see, he turns back because he's being pressed and he doesn't have anywhere to go. And then when you have the ball, you can then transition into counter. You see, and this is what I'm saying. That's mostly when you see this tacticals, they are saying that put what's the name defensive depth to 50, 60. No, in my opinion, you should increase it like to 80, 85, 90, because it forces your defensive line to move upwards, and then it forces your opponent to improvise, and by improvise they'll make mistakes. So as you can see here, the opponent lost the ball here because there was nowhere for him to pass to. So first, Jose team second man press with this guy and then shut this guy down, and because he had nowhere else to go, Jose switched to this guy again, put pressure on him, and then was able to counter attack. So meaning you have a lot of guys coming, and this is also the mistake that the other guy too was doing, because he was focused on attack. He didn't take a note of how leaky his midfield is. Okay, so you see why I always encourage what's the name team pressing. No, I always encourage outside traps and also high depth. Okay, so 1731 offside trap, critical moment requiring line manipulation, opportunity to seize or opportunity to squeeze the pitch are missed due to lack of proactive D pass commands. So you see what I'm saying. Jose increased the defensive depth of his team. So you see, there's a highlight here, and then the team is finding it, or the opponent is finding it really hard to pass through the middle. So what does the opponent do? Automatically, he has to go to the wings. No? Yes, he goes to the wings. But then Jose made another mistake. This was the exact time for him to offside trap. So he had to move. He had to press this twice, and by doing so, it forces the midfielders to the defensive line to move up. So as you can see here now, the midfield has been shattered again by the opponent. You know what the opponent did? The opponent, what he did was he saw that Jose was compact in the middle, so he did a fake trigger. So he triggered with Vicky and also with this, also with Frankie Dion and to this guy. So meaning this two midfielders were sent backwards. So meaning right now, the straight defensive line has been broken. No? And then he sends the ball backwards. So when the ball was given back to this lady, that was, and then he turned back. That was the exact time that Jose had to move the defensive line upwards again, but he didn't do it. No. So you see, he forced him to the wings, and then, like I said, the midfield is the most important place. This player here should be here. No, should be here to help. And you can see now there's another big gap here between the midfielders and then the defenders. Look. Now Jose was able to recover, and then he started team pressing. And like I said, team press is only putting pressure on the opponent's player in the player's line of sight. So this was really well done by Jose. He pressed with the winger, with Selma. So meaning it gave him enough time for his what's the name? His players to rest and also to be here for cutbacks. But you see, because he didn't turn off the team press faster, you see the whole defensive line is out of place. No? Out of place. And now, very good. Now you see, because there is no gap for the players to go, he wants to find space where Jose can overcommit and then he will score. And that's where Jose too butts into the bait of this guy. At this time, the person who should be pressing should be Selma, because he has three guys here, you know, and you are basically pressing three guys with two guys. So he has numerical advantage. So the person who should have been pressing or should have been Selma. So Jose should have switched to Selma and then teammate press with or second man control with this player and then cover this plays with Selma. But because he didn't do it, it forced these players to be free, and then he got another chance. And then as usual, cut back. As usual, cut back. So that's the ideas of a lot of players. They just want to go to their wings and then cut back. So what you have to do is to make sure the midfield is compact and also the space is really small, and make use of these wingers. These wingers, make use. You should have brought him here, or should have brought her here, and then teammate press with here, and then you had this place covered already. Okay. And then he conceded. So let's go back to another timestamp that I wrote. Maybe 18.5. Very good. Very good. You see, look, this is something that Jose did. And look, so the opponent is here. Like I said, the opponent will always go to the wings because he knows that whenever he goes to the wings, there will be space here for him to cut back. So he goes back to the wings, and then because there wasn't any chance for him to cut back, he sent it to the midfield. Né? So before the ball got to this player, Jose should have triggered the offside trap twice. So meaning before the ball got to this guy, these players should have moved forward. No? And that's basically what he did. So the players moved up automatically because of the depth, not because Jose triggered. They moved up automatically. And because they moved up automatically, the opponents saw that there was no space, so he turned back. And after turning back, that was also the time that Jose had to press it to trigger the offside press again. So you see right now, the opponent doesn't have any space, any space to run to. So, as usual, he will try to go back to the wings again. You see? So because look at something here. The opponent went to the wings, and because the space between the midfielders here and the defensive line is very, very small, there is no space for Hara to turn into. No? So the opponent is basically blocked. So you see, and then the opponent lost the ball. So I've been studying as a lot of for making a lot of gameplay of FC Pro players, and they all concede this goal, and they focus only on their attacking prowess. Very good. So by preventing the opponent from scoring, you frustrate them into making mistakes, and also you can then score. So you see here, Jose lost the ball. Like I said, I'm focused only on the defensive part of this game, and he should have offside trap because look at how deep his players are. He didn't move the wingers up, so you see there is a huge gap here, and now you see the opponent has space and time. So right now, very good. The midfield is compact, but then still Selma is not doing anything. So basically, you are defending a lot of guys without Selma. So by making the midfield very compact, even if Selma is not defending, you have to make sure that the gap between the defenders and the midfielders are very small, and then the opponent can basically they can't do anything basically. Yeah. So I won't like to prolong this video. All what I will say is one, increase the depth of your defensive line. I don't know how you maybe 80 or 85, and then always focus on that rather than the team press. So meaning make sure always, for example, when the ball was lost here, when the ball was lost here, it was the perfect time for him to move the defensive line upwards, but then he didn't do it, and then the opponent still got control of the ball. You see, so this was also another time for him to press. So when Gakpo got the ball like this, that was the time he should have pressed, because you can see they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players here, so it is really dangerous zone. So he should have moved the players upwards. Yeah. So basically, that's the one thing that I saw in Jose's gameplay, and something that he can improve on. And I think by improving on it, he'll become really, 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 really good. First, make sure that there is no cutting or no clear passes into the midfield, and then force the opponent to the wings. Now, when the opponent is on the wings, force him to turn backwards, and when he turns backwards, move your defensive line really, really high, team press for like 4 seconds, and then turn it off fast. And keep on doing that until the opponent gets frustrated and then they try to improvise. And by doing that, you get to reduce the number of goals you concede. So this is the defensive part of the video, and then soon I will bring up the offensive part. The offensive part, there you are really good. So where I thought you had to improve really well was the defensive part.